Grab your popcorn, find your seats, and get ready, because this episode of the Cinema Spotlight is about to begin. Subscribe if you're new, and please, enjoy the show. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Cinema Spotlight. This is the show where we dissect all things movies, TV, and everything in between. I am your host and self-proclaimed media expert, James Sena. For those of you marathoning these episodes in the future, I've been away on a small hiatus, but I'm so excited to finally be back. And the Cinema Spotlight is back and better than ever, new and improved, with new segments, music, some of which you have already heard in the intro, hope you enjoy, by the way, and guests being more common on the show. If you're worried at all about the show being different, don't be. Think of it as, having a bowl of ice cream, your favorite ice cream, and then with this new season, just putting some whipped cream and sprinkles on top. So it's just a better version of what was already existing. So there you go. Joining us for today's episode is my friend Jack Murray, and together we're going to start the episode off with old reliable, the Oscar Watch. And remember to keep track of all of our predictions, because at the end of the year when the Oscar ceremony happens, you get to see how right or how wrong I was in my predictions. Following the Oscar Watch is going to be an unnamed segment where we're going to cover predictions for a film coming out in March of 2024. And if you're keeping track with recent releases, I think you might know what that movie might be. And we're going to cap things off with a new segment I'm calling The Draft Room. And you'll have to stay tuned until the very end of the show to see exactly what that's all about. With that, this episode of the Cinema Spotlight is about to begin. And of course, here's an official spoiler warning for any content discussed here today. And if you wish to skip around to avoid spoilers, don't worry, we got you covered. You can find timestamps in the description both on YouTube and Spotify for your convenience. Folks, the wait is over. It's time to shine a spotlight on Pixar's Elemental.
Oscar Watch. Oscar Watch.
It is our first episode back from a little bit of a hiatus, and of course, the first episode back is going to be a first of its own kind. It is an animation-centric episode, when we haven't really had one of these before. Last year, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio we all knew it was going to win, so I didn't even think it was worth an episode. But this time around, there's a lot more conversation to be had, and just remember, animation is just as important as live action. And of course, to help talk through these categories of the Oscars and some of these wonderful movies, I have my very good friend, Jack Murray. Jack, say hi to the people.
Hi to the people, it's me, Jack.
The man, the myth, the legend himself. And today, we're going to go over and do an Oscar watch. The first ever, actually, Jack, this is the first time I've ever had someone on for an Oscar watch segment. When I had Tyler on last season, he wasn't actually in the Oscar watch. So how does it feel to kind of be an anomaly?
It feels like a big deal, James. A massive deal. I am ready.
Hell yeah, we love that. So, give us a little bit of an intro here, because I know when we were talking off the mic, I guess, you mentioned something about the advertising for the movie Elementals, and I would love if you could share kind of your thoughts about that.
Yeah, okay. So I was watching the ads for Elemental, right? As a lot of us were, they were everywhere, which I feel like isn't common for Pixar these days. I feel like, or what was it, that Disney movie that didn't get too much advertising?
Like a
Strange World, yeah. I feel like I didn't see anything about that
Neither
movie.
did I.
So, but anyway, Elemental had these ads that just made it look like a little rom-com, right? It just made it look like a little romance story between Waterboy and Fire Girl, like that Flash game we all played when we were 12. But, the movie caught me off guard. It felt different than what I expected, and I liked that. I didn't love the movie. I'll say that outright.
Okay.
I didn't love it. But those differences, it was a little more than I expected, plot-wise. And I liked that.
That's good to hear, because I'm sort of in the same boat. I think I maybe loved it a little bit. Actually, you know what? I was gonna do this later in the segment, but what's your rating? Because for me it's a flat 8 out of 10. Because I thought it was I
Really?
thought it was an 8.
Okay, that's high for me
Okay,
personally. I would probably give it a 6.
a 6.
Yeah,
Okay, okay. No, so this is gonna be a fun conversation then because we disagree a little bit.
for sure. That makes things more interesting.
Well, before we get into Elementals by Pixar, uh, let's give some credit where credit's due because we have this movie directed by Peter Sohn. And then, do you want to hit us with the voice actors for Ember and Wade, the main characters?
Sure, we have Ember voiced by Leah Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
and Wade is voiced by Mamadou Atiye.
You are so see. This is why I love to have a guest like Jack on, who is so good with. I am notorious. Anyone who is a dedicated listener knows how bad I am at pronunciations. So thank you for absolutely. So you noticed that I did that on purpose. I set you up with that.
Oh, I for sure did.
See, here's the thing, right? I think the best way to go about explaining this movie and talking about it before we go into the Oscars is just our biggest pros and cons. So we'll go tit for tat, and I'll head it off with a pro. You can do a pro, and then we'll hit some cons.
Sounds good to me.
A little bit of elemental ping pong.
Yeah, fantastic.
But I'm gonna lead it off here with one of the biggest things I liked about this movie is that it pulls away from the story-driven shenanigans that Pixar has been doing. And by that, I mean, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot, where a lot of recent Pixar movies do this thing where they focus so much on the story, and the story is almost always a little bit subpar because it's a kids movie, so it's not going to be too complicated of a story. In this movie, I feel like they did a wonderful job of giving us two main characters that are incredibly likable. I mean, I found Ember and Wade both very enjoyable main characters, and the fact that they spent more time on the characters rather than the story itself. Not to say that the story was bad. I think it was simple, right?
Of course,
It's like doing a science fair project on the velocity of balls rolling down a hill, because that was, for me, I don't know if anyone can relate to that at all. That for me is like the most vanilla ice cream like science fair project that you could have done.
For me, it would be the baking soda volcano.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah,
that's the one where you hear that and you're like, okay, some 5-year-old made that in his basement and his dad did the whole thing for him.
That's the best way to describe this. I think it's a baking soda volcano, but done in a way where it's a very clean one. It's not very messy. It knows it's a baking soda volcano, but at the same time, it's gonna make you erupt with tears. So. I know
that was
a
good.
little bit of fancy wordplay there. But yeah, no, for me, I love that we got some characters that were genuinely enjoyable. I feel like the last couple movies didn't really have characters that I really latched on to as much. But what for you was a highlight?
I mean, I think the obvious thing to say is the animation, right? I think, I mean, Pixar's been stunning from the beginning. I think even ever since Toy Story, which, I mean, doesn't look great today, but it was amazing for its time. Pixar has just done a fantastic job with visuals, and, like, this movie's no different. I think one thing that I'm doing a bit of a con in the pros section. One thing I didn't love was the design for the fire people. There just felt like there was something off about it.
Okay.
And I think I realized why. They're kind of their own light source, right, in the scene.
Right.
So, like, they just feel a little weird. But outside of that, I loved how the movie looked, and I think everyone who sees it will agree. Like, the water people, beautiful. The scenery, beautiful. Everything just looked great.
I totally agree. And I'm going to say this. I totally see where you're coming from with the fire people being their own light source. I think that was an intentional choice. However, I agree that at times it was a little bit much. So I think that while it was an intentional choice, and I appreciate that they tried to go that way with it, I think that the execution of it could have been done better.
Yeah, it's just, I don't even know what it is about that, like, that threw me off so much. But it was just, they were sometimes a little weird to look at.
One thing, I'm going to say one more thing that I really liked, but then I'm going to pivot into a con here, and one of the things I did really like was I love the parallel that this movie makes about an immigrant family. Like that's the vibe. That's
Oh,
the vibe
yeah.
that I got, and I really like that because
Oh, that's 100% what they're going
right,
for
and
sure.
for me, it really appealed to me because for those that aren't aware, my family is an immigrant family. My mom is from Italy, so this for me it's something that spoke to me in a certain way, and the I don't know if this is gonna sound bad or whatever, but when the Ember's mom, I don't remember what the character's actual name was. Was it Cinder?
I think Cinder was the mom, yeah.
Played by Sheila Vasso, and I thought that her character was very funny because that's very traditional of like a European, like like an overbearing mother that's always like in the business of, you know, the romance side of things. So that I totally got, and you could hear like they kind of tried to incorporate like a fire language, like a foreign language into it a little bit, which I thought was really cool.
It was.
But one of the things that I didn't like was, you know what, while I try to gather exactly how I'm gonna say this, I want to hear more
Sure.
from you. Like, what was your biggest thing that was like a point against it?
Yeah. What you were talking about actually kind of made me think of a pretty big con for me, and it's that the movie was very focused on its water and fire people and like the dynamic between those two societies. I feel like the earth and air people kind of got a little shafted.
You know what? I think now that you say that, I think that's what I was trying to, because it felt so like water and fire, and then like sure you got to see a couple of the other ones, but it just made it feel like I don't know, like I would have liked a better mix. Like why can't these elements,
Right.
like, is this the only time where elements have mixed? Like, is it only fire that can't mix? Like, what?
That's kind of what it is made out to be, but then in that case, what's the point of having these four different, I mean, essentially races of people, right? But then only having this dynamic between the two, having water on top, fire below, and then earth and air just somewhere? Like they're not really part of the overarching metaphor, and so because of that, we don't really get a metaphor, at least for me, that's like super cohesive, if that makes sense. But I can also understand that metaphor spoke to you a little more than me as an immigrant or as someone from an immigrant family. Like, as someone who isn't personally,
Mhm.
I think I got less out of this movie. And I think that makes sense, right? Like, I think Turning Red definitely spoke to the younger female audience. You know, I think different movies are made for different people. And at the same time, some movies are made for a certain group, but can have that wide appeal. I think Elemental almost got there, but I think the metaphors baked into it just didn't quite hit for me.
Yeah, and I think that's totally valid. And like, just to pivot a little bit here, while I totally hear that, and I think that one thing I liked how they kind of played around with the different uses of the elements, but it felt like we were seeing that all for the first time in this world, which is weird because I feel like if this world has already existed, what, like, why is this never heard? Like,
Why is this just now happening?
like
Yeah.
a question that I had was, why is it totally okay for this little kid character Claude? Like, there's no problem whatsoever with him trying to hang around the fireplace.
Yeah.
But it's so awful if the water people do it. So it's like elements of things that it's just like, it feels like a little there's a lot of little tiny inconsistencies like that where it's like I wish that was elaborated on a little bit more. And I think eventually, if there is a sequel, which I could honestly, I could see a sequel being made for it. I think that's something
could
that I
see
would
it.
like to see more, maybe of the other elements. But I will say,
Yeah.
one big con that I did have, and I definitely want to get your thoughts
Okay.
on this, was,
Sure.
and I think it's just something that Pixar has been doing wrong, which is why we'll get into in a future segment, the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Something that movie doesn't struggle with is, even though yes, in theory it's like a kid's movie, I think what holds this movie back for me from being genuinely like very, very good is the fact that it still feels like a kid's movie, and it feels like yes, there are things where it's like if you're an adult you can enjoy it, but there are ways to do it where it's a very entertaining movie for kids, but also adults can enjoy it as well. I feel like
I agree. I
yeah,
fully
I
agree.
feel like other
Yeah.
Pixar movies don't like older Pixar movies don't have that like as much of an issue with that. Monsters Inc. You can enjoy that movie from at any age. I feel like there's no.
I
Yeah,
agree. Yeah. I think they were less afraid to explore some pretty mature themes back with the older Pixar movies. Like I'd say The Incredibles is my favorite Pixar movie, and that one is like a family drama, and it's like there's so much in there that only the adults will appreciate. But as a kid, I still loved it.
right. No, 100%. And I mean, maybe fleshing out the parent characters could have been more of a thing, but I mean, I think that this movie inevitably, or not inevitably, sure, well, let's go with that word, very much so struggles with taking risks. This movie didn't really take a lot of risks, and I think that we're
I agree.
seeing that because it has a very low ceiling for how good this movie can be because of the lack of risks. And while it took a very simple concept and it made it for me at least, it made it very enjoyable, but so I think it's one of the better ones of recent memory. However, I think it fails to meet that line of how good it could possibly be because of the lack of risks.
Yeah, it very, like you were saying, it very intentionally is aimed towards kids, which isn't a bad thing, but we've also seen how animation can be made for both kids and adults. And I think this movie doesn't quite do that.
Right. And speaking of which, actually, let's talk about this movie as it comes to the Oscars, because this movie, so we're starting with Elementals here. We're doing an Oscar watch for Elementals. We're a little bit late on the Spiderverse movie, the big phenom.
Right, the Spiderverse train.
Right. And we will be talking about that in just a little bit in the episode. But, Jack, what's the likelihood that you think this movie gets a win, an Oscar win?
I would say pretty low. I think even though Pixar has a good track record with the Academy, right? And like they get Oscars. We've seen that before. I don't think this movie just lives up to Pixar's peak. And because of that, and also because of the other animation, specifically Spider-Verse that came out this year, which again we'll talk about, I don't think this has a chance against that if taken like a little objectively, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think a huge contributor to that is exactly what we were talking about, where it didn't really take those risks that it would have needed to push it over the edge. And on top of that, I think along with failing to take those risks, I think the fact that it wants so badly to be a movie that anyone of any age can enjoy, it's
Right.
still very, and I don't know what it is. Like I don't know what it is about the movie that makes it not like it makes it only feel for kids. I watched it and I enjoyed it, but then there was an aspect where I was like, well, I feel weird watching this as an adult because even though some certain things hit pretty hard, it didn't feel like I don't know. Can you make some sense out of that?
No, I agree with you completely. I mean, like you said, it just feels like you're watching a kids movie, and it's difficult to put your finger on why. Like I can't really figure out when this trend started, but to a certain point, I think maybe since after Coco, maybe. I think a lot of Pixar movies have felt this way.
Which is so funny to me because, and I wanted to make sure I mention this, and I don't know if it's actually eligible for an Oscar, but
hmm
there's a Pixar short before this movie that I mentioned to you off the mic called, I think it's Carl's Date or something like that, and it's about Carl Fredricksen from Up, and he interacts with Doug, and it's a Pixar short. I don't know if it's eligible for an animated, like, because I know that there is a category for short or animated shorts. I know that there is. I don't know if it's eligible for that. If it is, I think genuinely it has a very good chance of winning if it's even eligible. I don't know if it is, but it just shows that Pixar does know how to make something that can affect anyone of any age.
They do.
And it's because that
Yeah.
short was so beautiful. It immediately, like, it was what, 5 minutes long, and it did bring me to tears. It brought me to
Yeah.
tears much easier than Elementals was able to by the end, which I thought was kind of crazy. I don't know, it just goes to show, like, you don't have to be a kid to enjoy that short, and in fact it almost hits even harder if you are an adult. So I think, like,
Oh, for
Pixar
sure.
knows how to do it, which is just mind-boggling to me that they're not translating that to their feature films.
Right, right. They're still capable of storytelling like at that level.
Right. And I just, before we head on over to our second segment, I feel like there is something that needs to be talked about as it relates to, because this is the Oscar watch, of course.
Right, right.
Jack, can you tell the people what is standing in this movie's way of winning an Oscar? Because it's a good movie, and in theory, if there was a year with less competition, maybe it would stand a chance. But I can say, I mean, can you tell us what
Oh,
yeah.
for sure. I mean, there's a world where this movie had a chance at an Oscar, but this is not that world because in this world, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse came out this year, and James, it was phenomenal. I think it met and exceeded a lot of people's expectations, mine included. I've seen it 3 times
Oh,
now.
wow.
Probably gonna go see it a fourth. Yeah, I every viewing has made it better and better in my eyes, and I love that movie, and I think it deserves almost every bit of praise it's getting, which we can talk about a little bit at some point. But it's at least a 9.5, if not a 10 out of 10 for me.
That movie for me at this point, it's a very solid 9.5. Again, I think with
Right,
time, very possible it could go up. But it's one of those movies where it does actually have a pretty high ceiling of how high it can go, as opposed to Elementals, which is good. It's really good in my eyes, but it doesn't have a very high ceiling. So that's the difference there.
for sure, for sure. I think Spider-Verse just did so many unique things, so many beautiful things without. I mean, its animation style is so unique compared to Elemental. I think its characters had more depth, the music was beautiful, uh, everything about it just kind of goes at least one step, if not more, ahead of what Elemental was able to do.
Absolutely. And speaking of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, in just a minute we are going to take a bunch of time here, and we're going to talk about what we think is in store for that third movie that's coming out that everyone is so excited for. So before we get into that, I'm going to go and send it off to the first commercial, but don't go away because we will be right back. Which movies do you want mentioned on the Oscar Watch? Let us know on Instagram at _cinema_spotlight, and drop a follow while you're there to get updates, behind the scenes details, and to participate in polls following each episode. Now, let's get back to the show. In the last segment, we gave a little bit of a preview and we talked about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This segment, we're going to geek out a little bit. We're going to talk about it even more, and more importantly, we're going to give our patent pending predictions for Beyond the Spider-Verse. We're going to give our takes on what we think could happen based on what happened. So if you heard that correctly, you know that there 100% are going to be spoilers. Like I said in the intro, there will be a notation in the description, hopefully if I remember, to help a little bit with avoiding spoilers. But I mean, if you haven't seen the movie, what are you doing? What are you doing if you...
Exactly. And you know what? If you haven't seen the movie yet, please go watch it right now. Please go watch the first one. I think it's on Amazon Prime or something like that. And then go watch the second one. And maybe again. Like, I love these movies.
What's your favorite part of this movie, Jack? Let's just jump right into it. What do you said you love
Oh,
it so
man.
much? Geek out a little bit for us.
That's like picking a favorite child, James, because every part of this movie, oh man. I I think it's only fair, right? My first pro for Elemental was the animation. It's only fair to start there here too. Spider-Verse has the most beautiful animation. I think Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse are some of the prettiest movies I've ever seen. The way the characters look, the way the settings look, the way different characters are animated differently. Like, they had Hobie running at 3 frames a second instead of 2. That's cool. Like he looked so cool. They had all of these different looks for all these different dimensions. They dipped into live action a little bit with that lady from Venom. Like they did so much, so uniquely, and in such a beautiful way. And the way it all came together was just chef's kiss. It was so good. And I think everyone who's seen it agrees. It's a beautiful movie.
Absolutely. And I think that just goes right into what we were talking about in the last segment, where the risks that this movie took, a lot, I mean, a lot of them had to do with the story, but even just taking animation and technical risks is such a
100%.
it just goes to show how far something like that would go. And I think we're starting to see a movement here, and I like to attribute it to the rise of anime into pop culture a little bit more than it was in the past. I feel like this movie feels, I mean, it feels comic booky, but let's tell it like it is. It feels a little bit anime-esque, a little bit.
I could see that, yeah. And I think it's because it feels like it works for adults.
Yes.
It works for anyone. It has a compelling story, which I think is only a tiny bit weaker than the first movies because of that cliffhanger. I think the cliffhanger just makes the story feel like a big old part one, and it feels like it's stamped on right at the end. You have to watch the next movie to see how this ends. But regardless of that, the story was great, and I think all the characters are just lovable. Starting the movie with Gwen, awesome choice. I didn't expect that. I don't know why I didn't expect that, because it makes so much sense.
It does
to start
make
in another
a lot
universe.
of sense.
It was, yeah, everything about the movie was like, there are so many little lines that you catch them and you're like, that's a clever line. Like throwing out the reference to Doctor Strange and that little nerd from Earth 199999 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the little Tom Holland Spider-Man reference. That was cool. And that was just a one-off line, right? And like they have so many of these little references that they just sprinkle into the movie, but it doesn't feel forced. It feels like it's part of the universe, or I guess universes.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like that is, I mean, that almost goes into just talking about our predictions for the movie, but I mean, all in all, like I think where this movie really shines is what it's able to do with the characters. And I think that we're starting to see, or not starting to, but especially in these movies, the movie does such a good job of making us care and understand each character, where I feel like,
oh yeah,
in contrast, I feel like there's so many, even in live action, I'll say, of just putting characters in the movie that feel irrelevant. Like, sure, there were a couple of just cameo Spider-Man, which of course that's part of it, but there's so many characters where we genuinely care about them because of everything that they've gone through in the story, and just
exactly
being just all the character development that they go through. And
and not only characters from the first movie, but also new ones. I think did a great job at developing and becoming important, and like being just as important, if not more, than some of the characters from the first movie. And like that is just so impressive because I love the first movie.
Oh, me too. And that's the thing too. I think the introduction of all these new characters is gonna do this franchise such justice when it comes to Beyond the Spider-Verse. So that being said, what do we know from this movie that can maybe give us some sort of clue that might happen to Beyond the Spider-Verse? Like, if we break it down character by character.
Right.
Where do we leave off with Miles? I'll give you the reins on that one. Where do we leave off with Miles?
Yeah,
and where do we think that's gonna go?
Miles is in a pickle right now, man. I mean, Earth 42 with Prowler Miles and Uncle Aaron, who isn't the Prowler, but certainly a criminal. I'm not sure where that's gonna go, to be honest with you. I don't know. I'm getting the feeling of a start of a movie that has a line, something along the lines of "Watch the mouth, not the hands," when Miles breaks out of that.
True.
And then I don't know. Some big fight might ensue. I don't know where Gwen is headed now, because is there a way for them to track which universe Miles went to? I feel like if there was, Gwen just would have went straight there, right?
I feel like she would have went right there, but if I'm gonna make a bold prediction right off the bat,
sure.
I feel like I don't know if there's gonna be a huge fight with the different versions of with Miles. I feel like
right
there's got to be something there where they maybe team up or something. Because I think, like, realistically, if you're Gwen, right, and you know that, I mean, she figures that she does see at some point that, oh, he's not in this universe. I feel like if she's thinking in her head, like, where could he possibly gone? I feel like I mean, all the spider people, they're not stupid. So I think she, like, will probably figure out pretty quick, like, okay, well, she must have gone to Earth. What is it? Earth 42?
Yeah, I wonder if there's like if the go home machine has like a log, like a history of
Yeah.
where spider people have been sent recently. Probably not, right? Because Miguel and what's her name? Spider Woman. She didn't get too much focus, by the way. The Spider Woman, like Miguel's right hand.
I feel like that's because she's gonna have a much bigger part in the third movie.
I agree with you, and I feel bad for getting her name.
I can hear both of us just immediately just typing to see. Okay, who is she?
You can take this one, James.
Of who she is?
Yeah, unless you're unless you're done typing.
It's let's see. It's not Haley Steinfeld. It's not. Okay, the fact that Daniel Kaluuya, by the way, is Spider-Punk was great.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, the whole cast for the movie was just awesome.
Oh, Issa Rae is Spider-Woman.
And Jessica Drew is the Spider-Woman's name. Okay,
Yes.
right. But yeah, she was a cool part, and I think you're right. I think she's gonna have a bigger part in the next one. She seems a little more sympathetic towards Miles and Gwen than Miguel, who, by the way, is an antagonist. Is, I think, probably a major antagonist in the next movie. I think he's gonna be a problem.
I'm gonna go out on a limb. No, not on a limb. On a whim. I'm gonna go out on a whim and say I'll debate you on that. I think we're gonna see a redemption arc for him, because I don't think that there's an evil Spider-Man. I think that if you already have
that makes sense.
You already have Miles potentially versus his variant, which I don't know if they'll be enemies. He might have to escape. But then you already have like the Spot, who is definitely the end game villain.
For sure.
I don't know if there's
that.
room for Miguel to be a huge threat. I think he'll probably have some sort of arc where he either comes around or something like that. I don't.
That's a fair point, because that's definitely possible. And I think with Beyond the Spider-Verse, the Spot kind of has to be the main antagonist, because Across the Spider-Verse featured Miguel pretty heavily in like the second half of the movie.
Right.
And the Spot didn't really have much to do. He was kind of just in the background, being this looming threat and like being this danger to Miles's dad, while Miguel kind of took up the mantle as the antagonist in that portion. So I think it does make sense for Miguel to take on less of an antagonist role in Beyond the Spider-Verse and kind of give that over to the Spot, who, by the way, I think it's such a brilliant idea to have so many Spider-Man villains to choose from, so many iconic ones, and go with the Spot.
That's such a good point. But I will say, I feel like the Spot of a lot of the villains portrays the wacky comic book concept of like the multiverse that the movie does so well. I feel like it really leans into that.
Totally.
But I want to make another bold claim here, and hold me to it if I'm completely wrong.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, not only will Miguel have a complete like 180 turn to the good team, I think he's gonna fucking die. I think he's dead.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. I think if he has a redemption, he's gonna see all the things he's done wrong and possibly sacrifice himself or like end up making a big hero play. That could definitely happen.
I feel like people have been saying that I'll say the Jake Johnson Spider-Man, like the main one with the baby.
Right, Peter B. Parker.
Yes, Peter B. Parker. I think there's a chance that he dies too, but I feel like this third movie, it needs a happy ending. I don't think it makes much sense for it to be a dark ending, because this last movie was sort of a dark ending. So I feel like we're in for like, this isn't. I mean, I'm assuming this is the last movie of the franchise. So why would you end it on you end it on a happy note? I feel like makes the most sense. Like,
I agree, and I think that's why Miles's dad is probably safe in the next one. I don't think he's gonna die.
I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair
I think
assessment.
the only problem with that guess is that that would mean the canon can be broken and things can still be okay, right? Because if Miles' dad lives, we can't just have his universe collapse. That's an even sadder ending. So, assuming that, right? Like, that means that all of this work Miguel has done to keep the canon, like, in check has kind of been for nothing. And so I'm curious to see where they go with that.
I mean, one thing I'll say is like, I think he's just afraid of the possibility of it not being checked. Where I don't think, similar to Elementals, I don't think he's willing to take that risk. So I mean, I don't know. I think here's my kind of summation of how I feel about the canon event type thing. I think if we've already established that Miles himself is an anomaly, why does his dad have to die? Because he's already not part of something that is like,
That's
you know what I
true.
mean? Like
That's
what?
true.
Like
Yeah, Miles' existence kind of already breaks the canon, so why is his universe okay?
right? Why would his universe fall victim to the same thing? Like, you know, so I totally get like the whole butterfly effect, but if this is the same type of multiverse that we've seen in the MCU, which, to be fair, I actually don't think is impossible. I think
I mean they kind of they referenced like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. So.
right. And another hot take, I think that there's a good chance that Tom Holland in full will be in the movie. Like
Human Tom Holland, just straight
not
up.
just I think he could. I think he genuinely could. There's no reason not to.
I could see it.
Because they
Yeah. Well, the one reason not to is contracts and like legal mumbo jumbo.
I guess so. That's no fun.
Yeah, but it's the unfortunate truth, you know. I mean, they didn't show any clips of him for a reason, I think.
I mean, I guess you're right. I mean, I guess that's fair, but I feel like if you're Marvel, why the hell wouldn't you? Because like Donald Glover made an appearance. Why couldn't?
Which was awesome. I loved that. That was, yeah.
That being said, actually, with the remaining time of this segment that we have, do you have any crazy hot takes, bold predictions for Beyond the Spider-Verse that you'd like to make here on the show?
Okay, yeah. Just big, like, mind-blowing things that don't even seem likely to even be possible, but could maybe
Let's
happen.
even put a wager on it. You and I will both make one final prediction, and if they come true, or if each other's come true or something, we'll put some sort of wager on it.
I'm up for that. And I think it's got to be something big. You know, it can't just be like, oh, Miles makes it out alive.
Right, but it's gotta be like, you know, just buck wild. You know, it's gotta be crazy.
Yeah.
Do you have one offhand?
You can go first if you've got one, because I'm thinking.
I feel like my crazy prediction could just be that Tom Holland will, like, what if he was in the final fight?
Right, yeah. I mean, you've kind of had a few crazy predictions already. You know, you've thrown them out.
I've thrown out a couple. I'm gonna say, for the sake of the wager, though, my big prediction is gonna be that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is going to actually be a part of, like, he's gonna have dialogue and lines, and there's gonna be
like he's gonna have a role more than just like a little cameo, like kind of like a Donald Glover level role, or a little higher than that. Do you think?
Possibly even higher. I'm thinking like same
Wow.
level as like Spider-Ham.
Oh wow, that would be crazy. Yeah, that is a pretty crazy one.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with that, and if it's, you know, when it comes true, of course, which is we'll know in about the time span of a pregnant baby being born. But that's 9 months if anyone is following.
So we will.
Did that inspire any bold predictions from you?
You know, the first thing that comes to my mind, right, and the only thing I can think of, and the thing I can't get out of my mind, I don't think it's as crazy as Tom Holland. Okay, so I think it's not on that level quite, but I think maybe Lego Spider-Man is gonna have a pretty decent role in this one, because I think Miguel saying he's one of their best, that could just be a throwaway line, but there aren't very many throwaway lines in these movies, and that could have just been a little joke.
Ooh.
But I don't know if it is. I think maybe Lego Spider-Man has some tricks up his sleeve, and I think maybe he's gonna be a key player in Beyond the Spider-Verse.
I like that prediction, because I think that it's very possible that they bring it back because people enjoyed it so much. I don't know if he's gonna have that big of a role, but I think he'll definitely I think
Make
if
another
he
appearance
returns,
for
I
sure.
think if there's like a little squadron that Miguel puts together to try to like anti-Miles
Oh,
thing.
if Lego Spider-Man leads that.
or the Spider-Man popsicle. I want to see that. I want to
Yeah,
see
they've
that
got
canon
options.
event.
It's man, I cannot wait for the third one, and I mean the bar is so insanely high, and so that's the only thing that worries me about it is that I'm I'm worried it's not going to be an 11 out of 10 and only a 10.
My bold prediction is that it's gonna suck. It's just,
That's
it's
very
just not gonna
bold
be
with the
good.
track record. I mean, you got to remember Sony made the Emoji Movie.
Sony also made Morbius.
Oh yeah. That is a great point.
For every movie that is a banger, there is a absolute L.
For every Spider-Verse there is a Morbius.
Right. Okay. Well, I hope it's good. But anyways, if you have some of your own theories, feel free to drop those in the comments down below. I would love to be able to read through all those and see what everyone can come up with.
Me too. Yeah, I'm curious.
That is going to be the end of our Beyond the Spider-Verse discussion. But coming up in the next segment, we're going to be doing a little bit of a draft. So if you want to know what that's all about, stay tuned until then. If you are enjoying the show so far, please remember to check out the episode playlist on Spotify. Also, leave a rating and subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes. Wouldn't that be a shame? Break time's over. Time for the final part of the show. And welcome to the third segment. This is the draft room, and how it's going to work, we're going to draft a bunch of characters, and it's going to be up to you all, the fans, to decide who won, I don't know why I said it like that, who won or who wins the draft. And for today's draft, we are going, me and Jack, we're going to draft Pixar characters. And we're going to be choosing our the best 5 each. We're going to start with Jack, and we're going to go back and forth. And we're drafting these characters based on our own, loveness of the character, how much we love them. And also, I think we can mix in a little bit of like how iconic the characters are, but maybe don't choose a character that you don't really like, but is iconic, so you choose it anyway. Like maybe that's part of your strategy.
It's got to be a passion pick. I feel like you can't just play for the draft. You got to play personally.
Right. I mean, we can play to the audience, I guess, right? If we think the audience loves a certain character, maybe we can take a crack at it. But
stab in the dark, if you will.
Take a what?
A bit of a stab in the dark.
A little stab in the dark, yeah. Like like some of these characters might. Actually, I don't know if any of these characters would stab you in the dark.
Probably not, but I mean, maybe not on your list.
Maybe. Oh, speaking of which, actually, before we hop right into the draft, a little rule to make things interesting, because there are some movies where you could easily draft 2 or 3 characters from that movie. Because there's so many Pixar movies, we're only allowing, in general, 1 character per movie, not even per team. 1 character per movie. If someone, for example, drafts Buzz Lightyear, that is the only Toy Story character among all the 4 films that is allowed to be drafted. And then we have to, we're trying to spread the draft pool a little bit thinner to make things a little bit more interesting and ramp up the heat, as we like to do here on the show.
Exactly. I mean, you could just take the whole Toy Story cast and no one would complain, right? I mean, yeah, we gotta spice things up a little.
Exactly. And speaking of spice, actually, no, not speaking of spice, but it is your turn. You are first up. You are up on the clock, Jack. What Pixar character is the first to go?
All right. I mean, first pick. The stakes are pretty high, right? I gotta go for something that I know is gonna be a winner. Someone who I know I want on my team. There is no doubt in my mind. For my 1, give me Mike Wazowski.
You fucker. you knew that was going to be my first pick. I know you.
Honestly, I honestly did not, James. I honestly did not. He's my number 1 Pixar character. I think Mike Wazowski, not only in Monsters Inc., in Monsters University, which in my opinion is actually a very underrated movie. I think people hate on Monsters University too much. I think he's the star in both of those movies. I think he's the heart not only of that series, but of Pixar, to be honest. I'll say it.
Yes, he is. He is, you you little bar of Colgate toothpaste, you.
I've never heard a more accurate description of me, actually.
Sorry, I don't know. I just summoned that.
It makes sense.
From just the bowels of my reaction to that. No,
the darkest recesses of your mind.
Should I do it for my first pick? Should I take fucking one of the characters from Good Dinosaur?
If you'd like to,
No.
James. I mean, it's an option for
I
sure.
don't think I could do that. In good
No.
conscience, I don't think I could. But you know what?
No, I don't think that movie's gonna end up on either of our lists.
I don't think
gonna
so
be
either.
honest with you.
I forgot that movie existed, to be honest, until I saw it on Wikipedia. You know what character I have to choose, though, if you're taking Mike Wazowski? I'm taking the titular character. Wall-E. Give me him.
Wall-E. Okay, for sure, yeah. I think if you're picking from Wall-E, it's between him and Eva, but he takes it, right? Like, Wall-E, oh man, what a beautiful movie.
He's such a beautiful character.
It's so much story with so few words. It's just visual storytelling at its finest.
He just draws you in. He's just doing his own little thing. But
he does. That's a fantastic pick, James.
Thank you. But I'm curious, what's your second pick here? Because we two huge options right off the board.
For sure. I think my two has to come from my favorite Pixar movie, which I did mention earlier in the podcast, if you were paying attention, is The Incredibles. For me personally, I think the character from The Incredibles that matters the most, at least to me, give me Elastigirl.
Oh, I see how it is.
Helen Parr.
You're going for the simp demographic.
Not at all. You know what? I think, okay, hear me out, right? We got the plot of the first film. Obviously, very focused on Mr. Incredible, right? Robert Parr. I think he was the first one I thought of. He's front and center in the poster that I'm looking at right now. Okay? But then if you think about it, the movie's about family. The movie's not about this one guy. The movie's about his family. And who's the most important member of that family? In my opinion, it's the mother. I think Helen gives the family dynamic something that Robert, Bob, Mr. Incredible doesn't. I think his relationship with her is more important than most of the superhero things going on. At least I would say. So Mrs. Incredible, Elastigirl, that's my number 2.
I mean, it's a good pick, but you know what I have to do?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go. Yeah, I think I have to. I'm gonna go Woody from Toy Story. I think.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to talk about one of the most iconic, not even just Pixar characters, just animated characters of all time, I think you have to go Woody from Toy Story.
Right. And honestly, I think personally, I would take Buzz, but it is a very close race.
It was that. I mean, that was part of like, I don't even know how you choose. I think for me, if you look at all 4 movies, I think Woody is more of the heart and soul, especially of the fourth one. I feel like that's Woody's movie. So overall, I think that Woody is just such a iconic pick. I mean, voiced by Tom Hanks, can't really go wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, even really just 1 through 3, I think Woody is really who we care about the most. I think he is the toy in Toy Story.
Yes, 100%. Thank you for making my case for why.
No problem. You know what? I gotta give it to you. Credit where credit's due. You know what I'm saying? Like, Woody's an excellent pick.
But now I'm curious, because who's your third pick now? Because I can already see that the choices are dwindling.
My third pick. All right. You know that short that just came out, James?
Fuck! Sorry.
No. Hear me out. Okay. What's the best part of Up? Universally agreed on. What's the best part of that movie?
What's the best part of that movie?
It's not a trick question. What's the best part of Up?
The best part of Up is the first 15 minutes where you see the beautiful story of a certain character's youth.
Exactly. And that's why I'm taking Ellie Fredrickson, Carl's wife. Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, his wife.
Okay.
Hear me out, all right?
Okay.
Hear me
all
out,
right.
James.
Okay.
Hear me out, okay? Up, great movie, but what's the fantastic part of it? What part of that movie is a masterpiece? Those first 15 minutes.
I mean, yes, I guess so. Yeah.
And who's the most important part of those 15 minutes? The wife.
I mean, I low-key think it's Carl, but if you want to,
you know what, you can say that. You can say that.
Then that's fine too, because I think that's
you know what?
valid.
We can't just go with the simple choices all the time, James. All right, we gotta get a little crazy with it, okay?
Did that
Carl's the obvious
Did that
choice.
animated short influence your pick? Because I was literally the only reason why I almost didn't pick Woody last round, because I was like, could I get away with saving Carl for the following pick? And I thought maybe
call.
I could, but God, not only did you not take Carl, but you prevented anyone from picking him, which is crazy to me.
It's true, and that's the power of that pick. You know, it not only is it a character that's prominently featured in what I think is the highlight of Up, which is that first dialogueless section with amazing music, pretty animation, and just heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching death at the end. But I like going with the wife. I think that's interesting, and I think that's a unique pick.
I think it's a good pick. I mean, I can't argue with you there. I do think Ellie's just fantastic. But for my next pick, I feel like I have to almost play a little bit of defense here, because there's a couple characters that I'm looking at, and I can't let this character just go another round, because I think you'll take him.
Just take him, whoever it is.
I'm gonna go ahead and take Marlin from Nemo. From Finding Nemo.
Riffing off the Band-Aid there. Yep.
I think,
and he was on my board too, specifically Marlin. He again, using this charm again, he's the heart, right? Like he is that movie.
Even though the movie's called Finding Nemo, I don't know if Nemo for me it doesn't strike as much.
Nemo's a plot device.
Nemo is 100% a plot device. I think that Marlin for sure is the heart and soul. And there was a small part of me that almost went Dory, except I think finding Dory for me didn't actually help her case, weirdly enough. Marlin's just a lovable character, I think, in that first movie. He's very grounded, and he really just...
And that title, the title Finding Nemo, that's a verb. Finding? Who's finding him? It's Marlin.
Of course
right?
he is.
Like, it's his movie.
That's what he does.
All right. Good pick. So for my 4, okay, only 2 picks left. So we're kind of getting down to the wire here,
right.
And we're also kind of weeding out which movies we can pick from, right? We only have a few of what I would consider the best Pixar movies left, and I think you've noticed that too, right?
Yeah, and if I have a feeling you're gonna take my next pick. I have a feeling.
You know what? I'm just gonna up and say it. I am not picking someone from Ratatouille right now. Okay.
Okay.
Because I would consider that peak Pixar, and that's not the direction I'm going in.
Oh,
right?
Okay, fair enough.
I think Ratatouille's more about its setting than its characters. The characters are obviously super important, but I think that movie is beautiful, not just for its characters, but because of the way its story is represented. Okay.
All right. Getting all philosophical.
That being said, we've both seen Cars, haven't we, James?
God damn it! Yeah, we've both seen Cars. I've seen all 3.
I've only seen the first 2, if I'm gonna be honest with you. But there is one character in Cars. Do you remember Doc Hudson?
Okay, you know what? Yes, I do.
Voiced by Paul Newman himself. Doc Hudson's my 4.
Honestly, that's a W pick. I was gonna say it's crazy that you're not going Lightning McQueen, but then I thought about it, and if you're gonna choose anyone other than Lightning McQueen, Doc Hudson 100% is a valid pick.
It's Doc. It's Doc. You know,
Doc McStuffins himself.
Close.
Man, and that takes that, because my next pick was gonna be Lightning McQueen probably.
Yeah.
So,
and that eliminates the Cars universe. And now we're really down to the options are very limited.
Not a lot of, character-driven stories here.
Yeah, a lot of the options that are left are from, I would say, the past 6 years or so.
Right, and there's a direction that I'm thinking about taking here.
I mean, the heart wants what the heart wants,
James.
James.
Wants what the heart wants. That is 100% true. You know what? No, I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save that pick.
Fair enough. That's valid. I mean, keep in mind I have taken about 3 in a row that you were thinking about taking. Just keep that in mind.
Okay, let me say, you've taken characters from every single one of the ones that I was going to, but you've taken
different characters.
Not the character that I would have taken myself, which is
interesting. Except for Mike Wazowski.
Except for Mike Wazowski, that is like the #1 pick overall. But okay. You know what? I'm gonna do it. You mentioned yourself that there was a movie that was all about the setting. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm taking Remy. I'm taking Remy from Ratatouille. I think Remy is the embodiment of, if you want it hard enough, anyone can do. Anyone can cook. Anyone, let me cook. I'm cooking.
Let him cook.
Let me anyone can cook, okay? And I think that Remy is the embodiment of, even if you don't think you can, You never know until you just give it your best shot.
He truly is. And you know what? If it's gonna be someone from that movie, it's gotta be the rat in Ratatouille.
100%. He brings the rat. I almost went I just couldn't remember his name, so I said Remy instead. But I almost I almost went with the critic.
But
I feel like he's not a likable character.
No, and I mean, some characters can be appreciated despite not being likable, and I think he could have spiced things up a little bit. I'm gonna be honest with you, James. You've taken kind of main characters so far.
I'm taking the best characters, Jack. I don't know what you want from me.
I understand.
I'm taking the best ones.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
All right, fair enough. I'm going for the deeper cuts, and I hope our audience appreciates that.
And that being said, who's your final pick? Are you saving a deep cut for your last pick?
All right, now I was fully prepared to go in on you with a technicality. All right, went on back, scratched that idea, right? And I thought to myself, who's your friend who likes to play? Bing Bong from Inside Out.
Oh, okay.
I think that at this point, I think that's a pretty strong pick. I think with the options remaining, I think Bing Bong is important to have.
But here's the thing that I'm noticing.
Sure.
My 4 compared to your list right now is looking rather alive, unlike yours. A lot of your characters are dead.
I am now just realizing that my last 3 picks are deceased.
That was intentional.
Honestly, James, it was not. That just happened. And I mean, the deaths of characters can really leave a lasting impact, and I think it's also a bold direction for Pixar to take sometimes, to kill off characters in movies that are so targeted towards children.
I think so too. I think that's so well spoken of you. And
I appreciate that.
Furthermore, I think I'm going to take your inspiration.
Oh boy.
Because there is a character here where I was skimming through, and I remember I love this movie so much, and it's just unfortunate that I couldn't remember for the life of me any other character's name. So I'm going to go with arguably the heart and soul of this movie. Not a main character, but the titular character. I'm going to go with Coco.
Yeah. When you said the whole death thing, I saw that coming. I saw someone from Coco coming, and yeah, that's a good pick.
That being said, I think that is our draft. Let's give a quick little recap. We have
right. Okay.
Name your 5, Jack.
So for me, we got Mike Wazowski, Elastigirl, Ellie from Up, Doc Hudson from Cars, and Bing Bong.
Bing Bong from
Inside Out.
Just for the people who are trying to jot things down.
Trying to follow along.
My team's got a couple all-stars though. I got Wally, Woody, Marlin, Remy, and Coco from Coco. So let us know in the comments down below. You can right on YouTube. Let us know who won this draft and why. What is your favorite Pixar character?
I think of all of those to label with the movie they're from, I don't know if it was necessary to say Coco from Coco, James.
I just wanted to for my own enjoyment. That's literally all. And with that being said, we're gonna head on over to our outro. But Jack, I want to say thank you for coming on to the show. You've been an absolute pleasure.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. If I had to plug anything, I would say go watch Spiderverse.
There you go. There you have it. Watch Spiderverse if you haven't already. Watch the first one and the second one, and then start waiting in line now for the third one.
Buy your tickets the moment they go on sale. You will not regret it. Unless it's bad. But there's no way it's bad, right?
I guess we'll find out in due time. And with that being said, we're going to head on over to our outro. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Cinema Spotlight. Huge shout out to Jack for coming on for this episode. He was an absolute pleasure. If you enjoyed, please leave a like on the video and give the show a rating on Spotify. And if you could, take a moment to subscribe to the show. I would really appreciate it. We have an official Instagram now. Go follow it at _cinema_spotlight for updates on when new episodes get released. I'm so happy to be back, and I'm excited to talk about movies with all of you. That's all for now, so I'm going to shut the spotlight off, and until next time, stay classy, friends.